Antisocial Personality Disorder Part 2. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and I realized that I kind of forgot to talk about my friend that I knew for over 25 years. I was friends with him starting when we were probably 9, and then I had to give him up as a friend within the past year, actually, when I learned beyond a shadow of a doubt that he just wasn't a good person. And, to be very truthful, I actually always knew that he wasn't actually a good person and that he wasn't actually a real friend. But he has issues, like, he has personal abuse issues that I always knew about. Like, he honestly would talk about them kind of a lot. For somebody that acted like he never talked about it, he would talk about it kind of a lot, at least to me. And it had to do with physical abuse from his father, and he would always tell me the story, and then act like he only told me the story, which I don't really know if that's true or not. It likely was, because I was one of the only people that would really talk to him, and I always gave him a lot of sympathy for that and would be endlessly excusing of his bad behavior. And I think, honestly, one of the reasons that he would fucking bring it up so much, like he would talk about his stupid abuse like once a year at least, and it was like, I honestly think it was his way of guilting me, and he knew that it actually, like, the fact that I had empathy for that was one of the ways in which he could get what he wanted from me. So yeah, I always knew that he was messed up, but we knew each other for so long, and he had no concept of whether or not I might be mad at him. Like, if I was mad at him, he would just be like, "Oh, well, Prince is mad at me. Oh well," and then he would at some point try to maybe initiate friendship with me again, or start hanging out with me again, basically like whatever happened had never happened. And sometimes I would just forgive him, but he would never really apologize for anything ever. And I never saw him apologize to anybody ever. Um, and when I was young, especially like through middle school, grade school and middle school, I didn't really have a lot of friends. I didn't really, I mean, most people don't really. He was one of my best friends. I only really had two, and I was pretty different in a lot of ways. So it was easy for me to be forgiving of him at an early age, even though he seemingly had very little ability to empathize with people. So I got in this habit with him of making excuses for him. And by high school, I was friends with him, and I would call him my best friend. But my real friends, like the other people that I was friends with, who I actually had more empathetic friendships with, they would always say that they thought it was weird that I was friends with him, and they didn't understand why we were friends. So as time went on, I honestly, it was true. It didn't really seem like we were friends. I didn't come out to him as gay because I never felt like I could tell him. And then he never came out as gay until like after high school. But he, it was this weird kind of situation where, um, despite the fact that I never really felt like that he was really my friend, because I wouldn't really confide in him, and I never had heart to hearts about like, it never really felt like he wanted to actually hear about anything that was going on with me. If I ever had something that was emotionally crappy going on, it always seemed like completely laborious for him to hear about it, to the point where he wouldn't even pretend to be interested. Like, he was just like, "Oh, well, this has nothing to do with me. I mean, why do you want to talk about it?" Oh, like, you couldn't. And so I never really felt like he was my real friend, but I would always he also would still always be my friend as long as I would be his friend. At least until it was convenient, and which it always was, because I guess I was a pretty likable person. Now I should just get into some of the other signs, about, like, why maybe he was my friend. For one, he looked up to me a lot in terms of he thought that I was always pretty popular, like starting in high school. I wasn't during middle school, but in high school I was very popular. People thought I was really, really cool. I'll be honest, I was, because I ended up DJing by the time I was done with high school, and people thought I was cool. And so he said that, like, at one point in adult life, he said that he felt like he was always playing second fiddle to me, and that, like, he was my sidekick. And it was weird because I didn't feel that way. Like, I never even thought about it in those terms. I think about it now, and I think that maybe the reason that he was my friend was because he felt like it was his only way of getting popularity. Because he was somebody who I believe had some sort of antisocial personality disorder, who also really wasn't good at being social. Like, he mostly wasn't charming. He could look innocent. If you met him for about 15 minutes, he seems like a really, really nice guy. But that's about as far as it goes. Like, he's not good at giving good compliments or charming people or whatever. He just is totally socially alien, which is not true with me. I'm pretty good at, making friends, even if I am being rather self-centered, even if I'm in a period of my life where I'm being self-centered. Well, he's not like that. So that was always a weird thing about him. Another thing is that when we were kids, we would do bad stuff together a lot. Like, we were a mischievous duo. That's what we would do. We would just do bad things. And he said in adult life, and this it didn't strike me as, I didn't know what to think of it when he said it, but I always remembered it because it was so weird. It was such a weird thing to say, and it took me a really long time to process why this was weird. He said that we would do bad stuff, and it always felt like I was just trying to do something for the sake of getting caught. And he was doing things and trying to get away with it because he actually just felt like doing something bad. And I thought about that, and it's like, wait, so basically what you're saying is that you thought it was weird that I was acting out to get attention, and that was probably the main reason that I was acting out. You were acting out because you just feel like acting out. Like, you actually do bad things for the sake of doing bad things. And, I was acting out because I was ignored and stuff. So it's funny if you think about it. It's like, oh wait, you just don't have any conscious, I guess, apparently. He's a major kleptomaniac. Major kleptomaniac. And he always kind of was. Like, one time he stole somebody's designer sunglasses at a family fun center that we went to when we were kids. And he totally stole these guys' sunglasses. And then they knew. And they were like these young men in their like 20s or so. And they seriously threatened us. And we were like little kids. And I had no idea what was happening. And his sister was there and she started crying. And he never just gave them back. Like, he just didn't ever admit to it. But he somehow hid it somewhere so they didn't find it. It was pretty weird. It was really, really quite weird. But he continued his kleptomania all throughout adult life, and he would steal from like charity thrift stores and stuff like that. And one time he got caught shoplifting from Nordstrom's, but it was less than $50 worth of stuff. So they have a policy where they let people go if it's the first offense or some weird crap like that. So that was always very weird. He only did things that were kind, that might help himself in some way. He was aware that other people would think that they were nice things to do, but they were always very obviously self-serving. And so if he ever helped somebody move, he was only going to help somebody move if he got a free meal out of it, and then he'd still show up super, super late. Or he would get paid or something. Like, he would never, do those kind of friend things like that you don't want to do, like help somebody move. And one of the things that he would do with me, and he did this repeatedly, even though every time he did it, it made me mad, starting when I was a kid, he would clean my room, because I am actually a very messy person in real life. That's like one of the dirty secrets about Prince, is that I cannot clean up after myself physically. I'm just like really bad at it, and hopefully someday I will be able to afford a maid. He would clean up my room vindictively. And when I say vindictively, I mean that, like, when I was a kid, one time he literally just shoved everything into my closet and then, like, closed the door. There was no sort of, like, any sorting or, he didn't even ask me, like, I might have taken a shower or something, and he, like, just shoved everything in when I was in the shower. Because it bugged him because his dad was an alcoholic drug addict for a while, so he was always worried about rodents, because his dad would have rodents in the house. So it bugged him to have clutter on the floor. So he did that, and he did that even into adult life. And one of the times in adult life, it was psycho, because I went out of town for the weekend, and I let a guy, not him, but some other guy, house sit for me. And he had this guy come over, the Antisocial Personality Disorder guy, came over, and he knew that I didn't want him ever to rearrange my room or clean my room or anything, because he had done it multiple times, and it always made me furious. So he knew. But he did it anyway. And then he did it anyway with the explicit knowledge that it was going to make me mad, right? And then he used the fact that I was mad as justification to get mad at me, because he wanted to call me selfish or something, like, or no, ungrateful. Ungrateful would be a better word for it. He wanted to say that I was an ungrateful bastard. I was such an ungrateful bastard that even when he did a favor for me, I would get mad. And so he did this alleged favor where he, kind of cleaned my room. And granted, he got rid of a bunch of things that I didn't want him to get rid of, like this one cable that I had to buy, which was, semi-expensive, and a few other things that he got rid of because he doesn't have any respect for my stuff. And it was all just a game. Like, it was just some sort of fucked up mind game. And also because he likes my house to be clean, because he's really anal about cleanliness. And it was also a trap. Like, he wanted to, like he was probably mad at me about something anyway, so he wanted to entrap me into being mad at him so that he could be mad at me, or I don't know. He's fucking crazy. Like, actually has issues, major issues. So, next thing. He was never in love with any of his boyfriends. So it's not just that he didn't really have friends, but he had several boyfriends, because for some fucking reason he has a really, really big dick. Now, granted, it's like really big, too big, to the point where I'm really glad that my dick isn't as big as his. Like, I mean, it's above average. I've had boyfriends say it was quite big, but it's like, I don't think it's that big. It's big because I've felt this guy's hard dick before. We never actually fooled around, but I've touched his dick while it was hard. He tried to hook up with me a number of times. I think maybe he was always kind of obsessed with me in whatever way that he could in terms of love. And he has a really, really crazy big dick. And so there are most gay guys probably wouldn't let him have put his dick in their butt because it's like too big. But the guys who like that, they like it a lot. And they will just endlessly date a guy for his big dick. They call it being a size queen. And so he would have these boyfriends that would just, they'd be together indefinitely. And I honestly think it's because of his dick. And he wouldn't really treat them well. It never even seemed like they had a real relationship. And there were always these very socially awkward guys. and you could tell they did a lot for him. Like, yeah, like one of them had a fairly good job and had a really nice apartment, and it seemed like that was the only reason. The only guy that he was quote unquote in love with was a guy that he dated for only about 3 months. So it wasn't even like they were really boyfriends for that long. But that guy was really, really, really cute, and I think that he thought that guy was really cute. And when he first hooked up with that guy, they hooked up, and he immediately, I think, had this sort of a feeling like, mine, this is the guy that I want. And then when the guy broke up with him, it didn't seem so much like he was actually like heartbroken or anything, because I don't even think he really knew the guy. I think it was more so like he was just furious because he didn't get what he wanted, which was this hot guy. So, he lied a lot. Lied all the time, this guy. And it was kind of weird because this guy, he didn't really have a lot of friends. Like, really, the only person that was close to him, besides myself, was his sister, who I'm also very close with and is actually a very good person. I actually really like his sister. And we never figured out how much of a liar he was until several years after we should have figured it out. And the reason why it took us so long was because he doesn't really talk to anyone. So it only took us, it took us in like probably our late 20s until we really started to realize that he lied a lot. And we had to sort of like bounce stories off of each other. Or I think she realized before I did. And it was like, wait, he just says stuff that's just not true. And that was another thing. And then the final thing that I want to mention is that, and this has to do with what I mentioned in the last video, he was really mean to some rather nice people for seemingly no reason, and then he was endlessly forgiving to some really crappy people. And that's what I think, that like these people who have antisocial personality disorder, they don't understand the difference, like why people treat people the way that people treat people. Like, they don't understand the difference between a friend, an enemy, and a stranger. So he would just be like pointlessly vicious to certain people sometimes, just because he felt like it. Like if the person was annoying him or whatever, he would just say something like really mean sometimes. Or similarly, there'd be somebody who's like a really bad person, like a meth addict that steals from people, who everybody stopped hanging out with. And he would hang out with that person and bring that person over to your house and not understand why you wouldn't want to be around that person. And you would try to talk to him and be like, no, that guy's a bad guy. Like, he steals shit. And he's like, I don't know. He's always nice to me. And maybe he would mostly be nice to him because that meth addict person always knew that this guy didn't actually like he was an easy person to hang out with, because people who have issues know that somebody else has a moral compass that's off. Like, if somebody else doesn't have the proper moral compass at all, then they they'll hang out with somebody, and they'll forgive somebody for doing, even after they've done something really, really bad. And I think these people often find each other. I like to think, that I was never like that. I've definitely had moments in my life where I had substance problems, and I was particularly self-involved and egotistical, and I had traits that were somewhat like this. But it ended when it ended almost entirely when I stopped doing like drugs, um, and when I'm completely sober, like I quit drinking for the most part about five months ago at this point. Um, I've drank maybe 4 or 5 nights since then. When I'm sober, I don't have the tendency to get into these patterns of like not thinking clearly and potentially like doing reckless bad, self-serving things. But I think when I was doing a lot of substances, like I used to use drugs, like, bad drugs. And when I was like that, it was easier to hang out with people that were like this because I didn't really stop to think about it. I didn't stop to think about how awful of a person he really was. And now I just really regret not knowing sooner. And yeah, that's the story of that guy with antisocial personality disorder. That's all.